Air. The scent of frying oil drifted silently through the crisp air like a whisper from the past. Lau Parker stood still behind the fogged glass door of the kitchen, eyes locked on the only man left inside, a tall chef with sinewy arms, quietly placing each piece of chicken onto a digital scale. No background music, no laughter, only the clinking of metal utensils and the dull hum of slow-boiling oil. A piece of fried chicken. It seemed simple, yet for the first time in over 2 decades of his career, Lau felt that his signature dish no longer tasted the same. The meat was dry outside, mushy inside, grease oozing like engine oil. It wasn't just a culinary failure, it was a symptom of something rotting from within. 2 days earlier, he had quietly left Golden Bucket headquarters under the simple excuse of a private retreat at the lake. But in truth, he had disguised himself as a regular food blogger, showing up at what used to be the crown jewel of the chain location 37 Lakeville, now on the verge of collapse. If you want to know how your company is doing, don't ask the boardroom, go to the kitchen. Lau had witnessed it firsthand on a gloomy Tuesday lunch, a family of 4 pushing away untouched trays, kids grimacing at undercooked chicken, soggy fries, and a mother silently requesting a refund. The cashier didn't even ask why, just processed the return like it was routine. This wasn't an isolated mistake. It was a crack. And then Marcus Kane appeared. At first, just a name on a name tag. A quiet chef, eyes deep with exhaustion, carrying himself like he alone was holding the restaurant up. He had no idea that the disheveled man in the corner, scribbling non-stop, was the very founder of the empire. But it was Marcus's actions that stopped Lau in his tracks. He returned to the restaurant at night, alone, without orders, without pay, turned on the stove, measured heat, weighed batter, took notes and threw it all away, repeatedly, night after night. Why would a chef sacrifice sleep, family, to do something no one asked him to? That was the question that led Lau down a path he never expected, a path of truth hidden in food safety inspection slips, in a locked filing cabinet, and in the memories of a man once given a second chance. This story didn't start with a report. It started with a scent gone wrong, and a single bite of fried chicken brought a CEO back to where it all began. The name Gavin Mills had never appeared in any Golden Bucket strategy meeting. He wasn't on any loyalty program list, nor did he have a social media following to warrant influence. But that Monday morning, he sat in the corner of Restaurant 37 laptop, plastered in stickers, a cooling cup of coffee, and eyes scanning every corner of the kitchen like someone who had done this his whole life. Gavin Mills was a mid-tier food blogger. That was the official backstory Lau Parker, CEO of Golden Bucket, created for his disguise. With thick glasses, a messy beard, and a wrinkled dress shirt hastily bought from a discount store, Lau walked into the once glorious restaurant, now the embarrassment of the most recent quarterly report. The staff didn't recognize him. The manager offered only a formulaic smile. And the other patrons, no one paid attention, just the way Lau wanted it. What a CEO sees in the boardroom is just the tip of the iceberg. The truth often hides beneath the kitchen tiles. Lau took a seat by the window, next to a wheezing air conditioner, and began taking notes. He ordered the classic fried chicken, the top seller of the entire chain. He immediately noticed the difference. The breading color was uneven, the aroma slightly sour. Most of all, the greasy residue clinging to his fingers was unmistakably from reused oil. As he waited, his eyes shifted to the kitchen. That was the first time he saw Marcus Kane. Marcus wasn't like the typical golden bucket chef. He didn't smile, didn't joke, didn't waste movements. Each time he lifted the fryer basket, his eyes seemed to calculate down to the exact degree. His hands bore scars old and new, but they didn't tremble. And most of all, he was always the last one out of the kitchen, even after co-workers had packed up and left. Lau jotted down Chef Marcus Kane, unusually focused demeanor. Every move has purpose. Possibly the key factor preventing total collapse of this location. No one in the restaurant knew they were being watched by the founder of the very company they worked for. That made Lau feel both somber and relieved. A few hours later, Lau walked out of the restaurant in his role as blogger Gavin Mills, having completed a local food review. But instead of posting on social media, he sent a discreet message to the private number of Sophia Chin, VP of Operations Location 37. Something's not right. Front end shows decline. Back end is a quiet resistance. Needs further observation. That night, in a modest motel a few blocks from the restaurant, Lau replayed video footage from a hidden camera inside his bag. Each time Marcus pulled chicken from the fryer. Lau slowed the footage to study his expression. The more he watched, the clearer it became Marcus was trying to fix something. Not his own mistake, but the mistake of a decaying system. They say the best employees are those who do their job well. But sometimes, the best are those who do the job no one asked them to. At 2:12 a.m., under the dim glow of his screen, Lau decided he would no longer just observe. Tomorrow, he would return. And this time, not just to eat. Location 37 was once the brightest diamond in the Golden Bucket crown. Positioned at a bustling Lakeville intersection, a Midwestern town steeped in tradition, it wasn't just a favorite local spot. It was also a training hub where every regional manager once went through their first boot camp. On a photo frame near the cashier, you could still see an old picture taken on opening day, Lau Parker, in a crisp white shirt, beaming beside a middle-aged woman with a firm gaze. The caption read, Location 37, First Prototype Branch. The woman was Jenny Castro, the branch's first manager. She created a culture where quality trumped sales and honesty was rewarded like revenue. If each branch is a heartbeat, then 37 was once the strongest heart. Lau had once said at a conference, and yet now. Lau quietly walked around the restaurant, unrecognized. Each step across the old tile floor creaked. Wall art hung askew. Fryers showed signs of light rust. The staff worked in silence, not out of focus, but fatigue. The mood was that of a worn-out platoon fighting a battle long lost. Lau recalled the executive meeting 3 days earlier. On the big screen, the graph for branch 37 had plunged from a consistent 18% annual growth to red alert status. Around the table, faces rush to a conclusion, blame the current management, fire the entire branch leadership. One cold voice recommended, without hesitation. Only one Sophia Chin had whispered to Lau, "Do you see it? This collapse is too fast. Doesn't feel like mistakes, more like someone's pulling strings." On day 2, under the guise of Gavin the blogger, Lau sat at the restaurant again. This time, he ordered fried chicken again, but requested thighs instead of wings. When the plate arrived, the crust was unusually crispy, the meat inside still cold. The brand's flagship dish had become a chefless joke. At the next table, a group of college students whispered while eating, "This used to be great, back when Jenny was the manager. It's different now, probably changed suppliers or something. Feels like reheated frozen chicken. I worked here one summer. Nobody stays long now. Everyone quits halfway." Lau swallowed every word like knives carving into his pride as the founder. He knew Branch 37 wasn't just a store, it was a symbol. And when a symbol collapses, it takes with it the faith of millions of customers. That afternoon, when the place was nearly empty, Lau walked to a wall corner where a branch history board used to hang. Now it was bare. The certificates, photos, and trophies gone. Only one thing remained, a paper folded behind the microwave, corners curled from the heat. Lau gently peeled it off, brushed away the dust. It was an old photo, Marcus Kane as a young chef, standing beside Jenny Castro. His eyes then were filled with hope. Jenny's smile, a quiet promise. Maybe it didn't start with decline. Maybe it started when people like Jenny were removed from the system they once saved. Lau slipped the photo into his notebook, eyes heavy in thought. Why had a once model branch fallen so far? Who had a hand in it? And if Marcus was the last one guarding the flame, why had he been left alone? In the cold wind called silence. Night 3. 3:47 In the empty parking lot behind the restaurant, an old Toyota rolled quietly into a spot. No headlights, no music, no extra noise, just the cautious quiet of someone too used to being watched. From the car stepped Marcus Kane. He wore everyday clothes, a grey hoodie, faded jeans, no golden bucket uniform like during the day. His steps were fast, deliberate, certain. He scanned the area once before pulling out a key, unlocking the restaurant door, and disappearing inside as it slammed shut. From a nearby rented sedan, Lau Parker held his breath and watched. It wasn't the first time Marcus had returned after hours, but this time, Lau decided not to just watch from afar. For the first time in the entire undercover mission, he reached for the side entrance keypad, the code only the founder knew, and stepped quietly inside. The smell of hot oil quickly spread through the space, and the faint kitchen light glowed behind the glass door. Lau pressed himself against the wall, avoiding every line of sight. Each of his steps moved slowly across the old tile floor. In that space, he wasn't a CEO, He was a silent ghost searching for the lost soul of his company. Through a narrow gap in the kitchen door, he saw Marcus. The man stood alone, like an artist before a performance. But instead of instruments, he had knives, a digital scale, a thermometer, and an old leather notebook. He carefully examined each raw chicken piece, holding them up to the light as if inspecting gemstones. Then he dipped them into a batter mixture, not from the standard recipe, but one he had adjusted himself. Exactly 7 minutes and 30 seconds later, Marcus pulled each piece from the fryer, placed them on a separate tray, measured the internal temperature with a high-end digital device not part of the company standard. Then, he photographed each piece from multiple angles, took notes, cross-checked, crossed out, rewrote, and finally, without a word, he threw everything into the trash. He's not cooking, Lau thought. He's investigating a crime through scent, taste, texture, and data. For the next 3 nights, Lau repeated the same ritual, every night, at the same time, with the same process. Marcus conducted his experiments each time with a different variation, lowering oil temperature by 0.5 degree, resting the batter 5 minutes longer, micro-adjusting the spice ratio, everything recorded by hand, no computer, no sharing, and no one knew. During his day shifts, Marcus returned to being a regular chef. He never revealed to colleagues or superiors what he had been doing at night. No one suspected. To them, Marcus was a single father with 2 young children, always leaving early to read bedtime stories. A model employee, but nothing special. But Lau knew the truth. He began to realize Marcus wasn't fixing the system's mistakes. He was quietly proving the system had been changed from the inside. One afternoon, while Marcus was on break, Lau accidentally bumped into him near the water cooler. The cup spilled across the table, papers scattered. "Sorry, I'm so clumsy." Lau fumbled, bending quickly to help. Marcus just smiled. "No worries, as long as it's not the coffee." Lau chuckled, holding his gaze for a few extra seconds. In that moment, he didn't see suspicion in Marcus's eyes, but exhaustion. Not from work, but from holding a secret for too long. And then, a small paper fell from Marcus's pocket. Lau picked it up. Not a receipt. Not a bill. It was a food test result from an independent lab in a neighboring state. Lau stared at the printed line. "Test sample frozen chicken. High level of tissue degradation. Suspected repeated freeze-thaw cycles. Does not meet food safety standards." Lau's heart sank. This wasn't just product swapping, not just poor quality. This was people's health being traded away. And Marcus, the silent night watchman, was the one fighting it all. Alone. The next morning, Lau sat in the familiar corner of the restaurant. But this time, he wasn't looking at the food in front of him. His eyes were fixed on the food safety report Marcus had unknowingly dropped the day before, a piece of paper no ordinary chef would ever carry in their pocket. Chicken subject to multiple freeze-thaw cycles. Cell structure degraded. Unsafe for consumption. A dry sentence. But anyone who's ever stood in a kitchen would know it's the difference between a crispy delight and a ticking health hazard. And now, Lau had to face something he'd never dared imagine. His product with his name was hurting the very people who trusted it. He recalled the night before, Marcus standing before boxes of frozen chicken in the walk-in freezer, scrutinizing every small detail on the packaging, not the usual stock check. He photographed each label, logged batch codes, compared them to papers he'd brought from home, papers Lau now knew were original invoice copies. Back then, he had thought, what could there possibly be to see in a box of frozen meat? Now he understood everything. After breakfast, Lau resumed his role as blogger to probe staff during break. He casually asked, "Marcus seems pretty diligent." "Huh. I noticed the lights still on after closing one night." A young cashier shrugged. "He's definitely serious. But he never stays after hours. Always in a rush to get home to his kids. Even swaps shifts just to make story time." A barista added, "He doesn't seem like the rule-breaking type either, but he's always the first to spot weird stuff with new supplies, like he's got a built-in radar or something." Lau nodded slightly, pretending not to care, but inside, a storm was brewing. If Marcus wasn't working late for fun, why was he risking so much night 4? The restaurant had been closed for nearly an hour. Lau returned. From his hiding spot behind the industrial dumpsters, he saw Marcus enter the kitchen again. But this time, he didn't start frying right away. He pulled a cardboard box from the fridge, inspected the label with a mini magnifying glass. Then he pulled a sealed envelope from his pocket containing document copies. He compared, marked, photographed, took notes, and for the first time, his expression wasn't just focused, but angry. Lau crept through the side hallway toward the rear shipping area. The smell of cleaning chemicals mixed with old fryer oil still hung in the air. He followed the faint footsteps to a small room next to the freezer, labeled Storage B. The door was secured with a cheap padlock. Lau glanced around. No one in sight. He pulled 2 small tools from his leather wallet remnants from college days when lockpicking was just a hobby. 20 seconds later, the lock popped open. Inside, an old filing cabinet, covered in dust, but the top drawer was polished, frequently used. And when he opened it, his chest tightened. Dozens of original invoices clipped beside their edited copies. Orders clearly marked fresh chicken. Internal distribution had been swapped for frozen chicken. Third-party supplier. Photos of genuine and fake packaging side by side, differing only in minor details, smaller fonts, misaligned serial codes, altered glue lines. Delivery temperature logs showing truck interiors 15 degrees lower than standard requirements. This isn't a mistake. This is an organized substitution network. Lau thought, and one name kept repeating: Derek Henderson, regional director. Back in the room, he stood frozen. What Marcus had done wasn't breaking rules. He was building a covert investigation. A man with no power, no backing, still determined to uncover the truth. With flour, oil, and silence. Lau stood in front of the mirror in his motel room, looking at himself as blogger Gavin. In that reflection, he no longer saw a powerful CEO. he saw a father, a man who once believed he was building an empire on quality and trust. Now, he faced a painful truth. The castle he built, someone was tearing it down, brick by brick, and only one man, Marcus Kane, was trying to rebuild it. Silently, alone. Lau Parker had once believed that in the company he built, every problem had a solution if employees were brave enough to speak up. But after the night he discovered Marcus's evidence stash, that belief began to fracture. The next morning, he returned to the restaurant holding a secret no one would believe if told. He looked at Marcus, the man quietly wearing an apron, cleaning the prep counter before opening time as if he were the only one still trying to save lost values. Lau decided to probe. During a short break, he offered Marcus a coffee. "You seem really dedicated to this place," he said, keeping the tone of a curious blogger. "I've seen you checking supplies, taking detailed notes. You should be in quality control, not just a chef." Marcus smiled faintly, but his eyes showed caution. "Just habit," he replied, glancing up at the corner ceiling camera. "Been here a while. I can't ignore it when something's off." Lau paused, then nodded. "I know that feeling, especially when you're the only one who notices something changing." This time, Marcus's eyes stopped, as if he heard something beneath the surface of Lau's words. "You've seen it too, haven't you?" Marcus asked, voice low. "The chicken's different, the coating's weird, even the fryers don't hold heat like they used to." Lau simply nodded. Marcus lowered his voice further. "I tried reporting it. First to the internal hotline, then letters to regional management. No one responded. I even got warned that I was disrupting operations. That same night, after Marcus left, Lau secretly photographed notes Marcus had forgotten in the kitchen drawer, pages packed with details of test batches linked to batch codes, labels, delivery times, and actual frozen temperatures measured. This wasn't just quality control. This was forensic investigation through fried chicken. The following night, in the darkness of his car parked behind the restaurant, Lau quietly read emails on the company Gmail account he had stealthily hacked to monitor internal chatter. One name came up repeatedly: Jenny Castro, former manager of Branch 37. Her name appeared in several system replies. Reported frozen chicken issue, unresolved. Requested supplier audit. Warning fryer oil, quality below standard. And then, one final note. Contract terminated due to underperformance. Lau's throat went dry. Jenny hadn't failed. She'd been removed for telling the truth. He remembered the woman in the old photo, eyes full of trust beside a younger Marcus. She had hired him despite a blemish in his record, the only one who saw potential in a young man who had stumbled. And now, perhaps Marcus was continuing her legacy, even though no one had asked him to. The next day, a courier arrived at the restaurant. Marcus received a sealed envelope, which he quickly tucked into his apron pocket. Lau caught a glimpse of the familiar lab logo. Minutes later, Marcus entered the manager's office and shut the door. From outside, Lau heard only a heavy sigh. When Marcus emerged, He was no longer the man bearing it all. His eyes were red, and his steps had slowed. That evening, when they were the only two in the parking lot, Lau decided to break character. He approached Marcus, holding up a phone with the screen on. "We need to talk about what you've been doing every night, about the test reports, and about Derek Henderson." In that moment, Marcus's face went pale. His body stiffened, like a reflex defense had kicked in, but then his shoulders fell, not from fear, because after months of fighting alone, he was no longer alone. The next afternoon, as Lau was packing to leave the motel, his phone rang. One of the employees at Branch 37, someone he had gotten to know over the past few days, whispered in a panic, "Something big just happened. The main freezer broke. The whole place is in chaos." Without hesitation, Lau rushed out of his room, jumped into his car, and sped toward the restaurant. When he arrived, the scene before him was utter chaos. 2 fire trucks, a service vehicle, 3 Golden Bucket employees hauling freezer crates out to the back lot, and Manager Stevens furiously arguing with a technician. Inside, the temperature was off. Gone was the familiar chill of proper food storage. The air was thick with the unsettling stench of raw meat mixed with the acrid smell of melting plastic. Lau slipped behind a counter and jotted down a quick note. "If food is completely compromised, the restaurant will be forced to close temporarily. And if this is part of a random string of incidents, it's likely intentional." Just as he finished writing the last line, the main door swung open. Marcus Kane walked in an hour early for his shift. Without saying a word, he removed his jacket, tossed his backpack onto a chair, and marched straight into the kitchen. "How long before the food reaches unsafe temperatures?" he asked Stevens. "We've got less than an hour." Stevens exhaled. "The main unit is dead. Backup generators weak. Over $10,000 worth of frozen inventory is about to go bad." Without waiting for orders, Marcus clapped his hands loudly. "Call the nearest branch. See if they've got spare freezer space. We need to move all the meat first. Chicken, dairy, veggies in that order." A technician stepped in. "I've been instructed to shut the system down if safety can't be guaranteed. It's company policy." Marcus didn't turn around. He just said coldly, "Policy won't save customers from spoiled food. Move." And so began an emergency evacuation of stock. Lau, ditching his blogger persona, rolled up his sleeves to help. As he helped carry boxes of frozen meat, he watched Marcus closely, especially as he inspected each crate of chicken. One box made Marcus freeze. He turned it under the light, tapped the surface. Instantly, he pulled out a utility knife and sliced open the tape. Lau stepped closer. "Something wrong?" he asked, forgetting his cover. Marcus tilted the box toward him. "See that tape's been resealed, labels misaligned, lot numbers been altered. This is a swapped shipment." Lau nodded. "And if I'm not mistaken, it's from the same supplier again." Marcus glanced at him, suspicion flashing for a split second, then gave a slight nod. "Yeah. All of it comes from the Northern Distribution Zone, Henderson's territory." After finishing the transfer, Marcus didn't return to the kitchen. Instead, He quietly walked toward the rear logistics entrance where only managers and suppliers had access. Lau watched him disappear behind the metal door. 15 minutes passed, then 20. And when Marcus returned, sweat dotted his forehead and his hands trembled slightly, holding a key. Lau knew. He'd opened another storage room, and instinctively, he understood that's where the final answer was hidden. Soon after, staff began cleaning up. Branch 37, despite the crisis, did not close. But within Lau, another door had opened, a door that led into darkness where secret decisions were made, shipments were tampered with, and brave souls like Marcus were slowly pushed to the edges. A freezer can break from machinery, but trust only breaks when the truth is hidden for too long. That afternoon, after the successful food rescue led by Marcus, the atmosphere inside the restaurant eased. Staff finally exhaled. Customers kept coming unaware that just hours earlier, the entire inventory was nearly trashed. But for Lau Parker, the event wasn't a temporary emergency. It was the final warning sign. A freezer doesn't just fail on its own. A string of errors doesn't just coincidentally line up. And someone like Marcus doesn't risk everything on a vague hunch. Lau quietly followed Marcus's movements after his shift. As the restaurant neared closing, Lau left his laptop and papers at the table and stepped into the employee hallway. It was the first time he crossed into the back of house. The corridor was narrow, worn, peeling paint on the walls, tangled wires, flickering yellow light from an old fluorescent tube. At the end, Lau stopped in front of an unmarked door, just a fading label taped on Storage B. He turned the doorknob. It opened. Inside a cramped, cluttered room, piles of old boxes, outdated promotional signs, cleaning supplies strewn about. The air smelled of mildew mixed with old plastic. A dim light overhead blinked weakly, just enough to reveal the space. In the far corner, beneath a layer of dust, something caught Lau's eye. A moss-green filing cabinet with a brand-new, gleaming padlock. A strange contradiction. Why would a forgotten room have a cabinet under such tight protection? Lau stepped closer. No sound. No cameras. From his leather wallet, he pulled two slim tools, the lock-picking skill he learned in college, now proving to be magic. A few minutes later, click, the lock opened. The top drawer revealed rows of neatly arranged files, purchase invoices, delivery slips. Each stack contained both original and edited copies. What was frightening was the sophistication of the fraud. One invoice, whole fresh chicken, grade A at $6,500. The edited version, frozen chicken, grade B at $3,100. Both had the same shipment ID, but only one was delivered. The cheap one. The expensive one stayed in the files. Attached were photos of real and fake packaging side by side. Only someone inspecting pixel by pixel would notice the difference: a round stamp offset by 1 mm, a slightly smaller font, uneven lid cuts. Lau flipped through more stacks. Transport temperature logs most exceeded safe limits by 6 to 10 degrees, yet were signed off with bold print, inspected, storage conditions met. And in the bottom drawer, he found a black leather notebook. First page, quality testing, weekly logs, Marcus Kane. Each following page was meticulously detailed: date, time, batch code, batter type, oil temperature, coating texture, grease levels, conclusion pass, fail, practically, a scientific experiment. The last page even had a map connecting branches with reported issues all under Henderson's region. And beside it, a shaky handwritten note. Jenny filed the first report, terminated 2 weeks later. I have to finish this. I can't let the next person fall. Lau closed the drawer and exhaled. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear of being caught, but from fury. Marcus wasn't just an employee. He was the only person in the system acting like the company's honor still mattered, and because of that, he was placing himself in danger. Footsteps echoed from the hall. Lau quickly locked the cabinet, reset everything, and slipped out just before 2 cleaning staff entered. That night, he couldn't sleep, because for the first time, he knew one thing for certain. Someone wanted Golden Bucket to fail from the inside, and only Marcus was holding it together. That night, rain pounded against the windshield like a war drum, beating in Lau Parker's chest as he sat in his car, waiting for Marcus to end his shift. Outside, the parking lot was deserted. The dim glow of the Golden Bucket sign reflected off the wet pavement, a peaceful scene beneath which a storm waited to erupt. Marcus stepped out, hood up, shoulders hunched like rain had long become a daily burden. But when Lau stepped out of his car and approached him with his phone, its screen lit up with photo evidence. Everything in Marcus's body language changed. He stopped, eyes flashing, not fear, not even surprise, but release. "We need to talk," Lau said, dropping the role of Gavin Mills for the first time. "I know about the lab, the midnight tests, the locked files, and about Derek Henderson." They sat inside Marcus's car, a beat-up Toyota with a loose steering wheel and a sagging passenger seat. The windows fogged. The space was tight, but not suffocating. Marcus gripped the wheel with both hands, eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. "You from corporate, I came to understand, not to punish," Lau replied. "Then listen. Just this once," Marcus said softly, and began. He told everything. About Jenny Castro, the former manager, the first to notice changes in supply. She documented everything, followed protocol, submitted reports on time, then was fired for underperformance. She was the only one who gave me a second chance. I'm an ex-con, no one else would take me. Jenny, she didn't see me as a mistake. After Jenny was terminated, Marcus tried to carry on her work, but every complaint was blocked. His internal access restricted, calls disconnected, reports closed with a note, "No irregularities found." And finally, a direct email from Derek Henderson. If you continue, you'll follow Jenny. Keep your head down. Remember, your kids still need tuition money." Lau sat in silence. In front of him was a father, not a hero in the traditional sense, but a man who had once made mistakes, lived in the shadows, and now risked everything to keep a small light burning, hoping someone would notice. "I could walk away," Marcus said, "be a chef somewhere else. But every time I think of that, I remember my father." His voice broke slightly. Then he spoke gently. His father had worked in a car factory. When he discovered a batch of faulty brake parts, he reported it immediately. But instead of being praised, he was reassigned, then demoted, then had his bonuses cut, finally forced into early retirement. My dad passed 3 years later. Depression. But the thing that broke him the most wasn't losing the job. It was no one listened. Marcus turned to Lau. "I can't let that happen again. Not when I can prove it. Not when millions of customers believe in the golden bucket." Lau felt his chest tighten. In that moment, he was no longer a CEO, no longer the most powerful man in a billion-dollar chain. He was a husband, a father, a man who once believed that if he just built the right system, justice would run on its own. But he had been wrong, because without people like Marcus standing silent watch in the night, that system was nothing more than a car with no brakes. "Do you have a plan?" Lau asked after a long pause. Marcus shook his head. "I thought about going to the press, but I'm afraid it'll only lead to this store being shut down exactly what they want. I even considered sending it to top execs, but I don't know who I can trust anymore, so I just kept recording. Long enough, detailed enough, so it can't be denied." Lau smiled gently. His eyes were still red, but brighter. "Then, maybe, it's time you don't fight alone anymore." That night, after leaving Marcus's car, Lau didn't return to the motel. He drove straight to headquarters, still in the guise of Gavin Mills, the food blogger. But his mind had fully awakened. He knew he was about to wake an entire system, a system that had grown complacent and almost lost its soul. At Golden Bucket headquarters the next morning, the glass doors kept spinning open and shut. But no one noticed the bearded, messy-haired man walking past reception. Lau Parker, the founder and CEO of the brand, did not return with his usual commanding presence. He carried a thick briefcase packed with a week's worth of evidence, fraudulent invoices, swapped packaging, independent lab reports, Marcus's notebook, and photos of evidence, signed by Derek Henderson. An emergency meeting was called for 9:00 a.m. In the glass-walled conference room, the entire corporate board was present. No one knew what to expect. No formal invite, no prepared agenda. Just one short message: "I need everyone present." No absences. Lau stood, dressed in the suit he hadn't worn since going undercover. His voice was calm but firm. "What I'm about to share will determine the fate of this brand." He projected a map, 7 branches with plummeting revenue, all located in commercial districts with rapidly rising land values. All these locations don't lease space. We own the land. If they fail, we have legal grounds to close them and sell. Sophia squinted. Who's behind Nexus Holdings? An analyst trembled slightly after tracing through 3 shell companies. I found the payment account from Nexus. Belongs to one person. The screen displayed the name Vincent Harmon. The entire room turned toward Harmon, who had gone pale halfway through the meeting. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Harmon stammered. Just wanted a few locations shut down. Quick land sales. High returns. I didn't tell Henderson to use bad products. But you signed the contracts. And you took the money. Lau cut in. You'll explain that to the authorities. 2 security guards entered. Harmon was escorted out. The door closed. What remained was silence and truth. Lau turned back to the board. I didn't build Golden Bucket to get rich off deception. And I won't let the one man who stood up for the truth be buried by it. He pulled out a file. This is Marcus Kane, a chef with a criminal record, but the only person in this system who still remembers what justice smells like. That afternoon, at Branch 37, Marcus Kane was bent over cleaning the prep station, still unsure about last night's conversation with the stranger who claimed to be an ally. He didn't know if he could trust him, or if it would end just like it had for Jenny, the woman who had given him his first chance to start over, and then was erased from the system like a blemish. A staff member entered the kitchen, wearing an odd expression. Someone wants to see you. In the office. Marcus put down the towel and quietly walked to the small room next to the manager's station. When he opened the door, he saw a man in a tailored suit standing in front of the operations board, eyes fixed on something far beyond the recipes. As Marcus opened his mouth to speak, the man turned and smiled gently. I'm guessing you didn't recognize me without the scruffy beard and thick glasses. Marcus froze. Gavin. Mill's wrong, the man said calmly, extending a hand. Lau Parker, CEO, and the man who saw the full truth about you. There was no anger, no fear. Just a long silence in Marcus's eyes. He didn't ask why. Didn't ask why Lau had disguised himself. He simply bowed his head. So, this is when you take me in, he said quietly. No, Lau replied, sliding a folder toward him. This is when I say thank you, and I'm sorry. Over the next 20 minutes, Lau explained everything. Harmon had been arrested, Henderson suspended and under investigation. All the sabotaged branches sat on high-value land targeted in an internal takeover scheme through the shell company Nexus. And most importantly, Marcus's evidence had been the key to breaking the whole operation. Marcus said nothing, just sat in silence. Lau continued. This branch will temporarily close for re-evaluation and remodeling, but all staff will retain full pay. And when we reopen, we'll need a new lead. Someone who understands the system not just in theory, but through burn marks on their hands. He pushed the job proposal toward Marcus. Title Regional Director. Food Quality Assurance. Marcus stared at the paper. as if he couldn't believe his eyes. His lips tightened. "I have no degree, no reputation, and I have a record. You have something this system has lacked for years," Lau said. "You have courage." 6 months later, Branch 37 reopened. The scene was nothing like before. Outside, a long line of customers waited. Inside, news crews set up their cameras. A large banner hung above the entrance. "Reopening Day. Quality you can trust." Marcus stepped out in a gold-trimmed suit, the new symbol of the quality director. He was no longer just a chef. He was the pioneer of the Midnight Revolution, an initiative encouraging employees throughout the company to propose improvements in recipes, working conditions, and production processes. Inside the restaurant, a corner had been transformed into the innovation station, an open test area. Marcus's idea. Customers could watch chefs check crispiness, batter ratios, frying times, all recorded like a live food lab. At the reopening ceremony, Lau arrived with only 2 staff, no fanfare, no scripted speech. He stood beside Marcus, placed a hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "Do you know what makes me believe we'll never go off course again?" "What?" "Because this time, the night guard has the key." Marcus smiled. Not the quiet smile he used to wear, but a full, round smile, like someone finally exhaling after years. The ribbon was cut. The doors opened. The first customer walked in, and Marcus personally handed them the first meal. "This smell," the middle-aged customer grinned, "takes me back, like when Jenny used to work here." Marcus nodded. "Because now, we do it the right way." That evening, as the last guests left Branch 37, laughter and compliments still echoed in the air. Chicken trays had been wiped clean, every meal served as if it were opening day. And for Marcus Kane, it truly was a beginning. He was no longer the man sneaking into kitchens at night to track oil residue. Now, everything he once did in secret had become the system standard. In the small room behind the kitchen, Marcus carefully placed his old notebooks inside a new glass case beside the innovation station. A small plaque underneath read in Lau Parker's handwriting, "The Midnight Revolution, where quality is measured, 1 fry at a time." Sophia Chin, now Executive Vice President, entered, smiling at Marcus, ready for the regional meeting next week. "Not entirely," Marcus chuckled, "but I'll prepare, as long as I'm allowed to bring my notebook." "Not just allowed," Sophia said. "It's mandatory." After everyone had gone, Marcus returned to the kitchen. 3:55. The kitchen now gleamed bright, spotless. No more shadows, no more fear, no more of the old Marcus, fumbling alone in silence. He opened the fridge, checked the cold, pulled a chicken piece, weighed it, adjusted fryer temperature, started the stopwatch. Not out of suspicion, but out of remembrance. Suddenly, the back door opened. Lau Parker stepped in, holding 2 cups of hot coffee. "I figured you still keep the 4 a.m. habit." Marcus smiled, taking a cup. I just don't want to forget that feeling. The one you get when you know something's wrong, but there's still time to fix it. They sat down at the stainless steel table, the one that had been their silent battleground for months. Now, it was a nameless conference room for two men, one founder, one guardian. Lau handed Marcus another folder. This is the expansion plan for innovation stations across all 2,000 branches. You still believe in the system. I don't believe in the system. I believe in the people who dare to fix it. Marcus sat quietly for a moment. We won't find 2,000 Marcus Canes. We don't need to, Lau said. We just need 2,000 people to know that if they stand up, someone will listen. Marcus's story spread through the media. Business schools began teaching the case as a lesson in corporate ethics and courageous leadership. But the thing Marcus was proudest of wasn't the title, wasn't the bonus. It was the day he saw Jenny Castro, the woman who'd been fired for telling the truth, walk into the store with a new name badge, Regional Training Manager. He walked up and hugged her tightly. You believed in me. Now, it's my turn to believe in myself. At the service counter, a young employee whispered to a co-worker, Mr. Marcus used to be a chef here. Yeah, but not just a chef. He's the one who kept the spirit of this place alive. When everyone gave up, he stayed. Marcus overheard. He just smiled quietly. No need to explain. Because sometimes the truth doesn't have to shout. It just has to be upheld day by day. Before leaving the restaurant that night, Marcus stood in front of the sign, Golden Bucket, quality you can trust. From now on, that wouldn't just be a slogan. It would be a promise written in sweat, burns, and the times he was nearly buried by silence. Some leaders are born in boardrooms, but real leaders are forged in kitchens at 4 a.m. when no one's watching.